Let's proceed with substantive rights guaranteed under the Bill of Rights. Um, First up, you have on matters of what cannot be criminalized. What cannot be criminalized are as follows. First, on the matters of your mere beliefs and aspirations, it says that in Section 18, no person shall be detained solely by reason of his political belief and aspirations. The key word there is the term solely. Okay. Ours is a democratic system, and in a system of democracy, people always agree to disagree. Sometimes we have political perspectives that may be in disagreement with others. Sometimes we may even be too passionate and too verbally violent about it, but it is only up to that point that we are free to express our democratic way of living, no? Because if we pair our political beliefs and aspirations with unlawful acts such as matters involving inciting to sedition, rebellion, coup d'etat, or when they become slanderous or libelous, you could be imprisoned for that. But only if it includes only an expression of your political beliefs and aspirations without any attendant criminal act, then you cannot be imprisoned for it. Because truly in a democratic society, we thrive on conflicting opinions where we enrich each other's ideas in politics and in governance. If we disagree with each other, then we learn from each other. If nobody learns from each other's mistake, then so be it, because that is our democratic way of living. Secondly, on the matter of debt and civil obligation, Section 20 says that no person shall be imprisoned for debt or non-payment of poll tax. Literally, it means you cannot be imprisoned if you do not pay your debt. But you are subject to civil liabilities, of course, no? Your debt can still be subject of a collection case, but cannot be made criminal. No, it cannot be. There is a misnomer, like what some councils do, some lawyers do, send demand letters for non-payment of a credit card debt with the threat of imprisonment, but that is not ethical nor is it correct, because generally no person may be imprisoned for non-payment of a credit card debt under the RA 8484 access device law. But the story is different if there is a fraudulent act attending, no? Because if there is the presence of the specific circumstances, no, in Section 14, then there is a presumption that the credit card is used with an intent to defraud. The circumstance is if you change residence or place of work, and then you do not inform the credit card company, and your debt is past due for 90 days, and your obligation is more than 10,000 pesos, then that presumption that the card is intended for fraud. No? How about bouncing check? Are you not being imprisoned for non-payment of your the representation of your check when it bounces? No. According to the Supreme Court, it is not the non-payment of debt that is being imprisoned there or penalized, but it is to prohibit the making of worthless checks and putting them into circulation. This is because this affects business and commerce, ultimately the general public interests. Because until right now, when we are already very digital, we still make use of checks, in fact, no. But this debt refers to civil debt and not one arising from a criminal offense. Because if the obligation comes from criminal offense, then you really can be compelled under the pain of criminal liability or imprisonment, for example, if you refuse to pay your obligations arising from a criminal offense. You cannot also be penalized or when you do an act which was innocent when done. No? This is what we call ex post facto law. No ex post facto law shall be enacted according to Section 22. The criminal law concept is nullum crimen nulla pena sine lege. No? This is an ex post facto law. No? Generally, that's how we describe it. No? So in the case of kay Villegas kami, there are certain examples there of such ex post facto law. Number one, of course, is the traditional concept of an ex post facto law, where the doctrine may be directly applied. A law which makes criminal an act done before the passage of the law, which was innocent when done, and punishes such an act. Um, According to the case of Villarreal versus People, no act constitutes a crime unless it is made so by law. Nullum crimen, nulla pena sine lege. If an act is viewed by a large section of the population as immoral or injurious, it cannot be considered as a crime absent any law prohibiting its commission. The second instance is um, when a law aggravates a crime or makes it greater when it was committed, and it is applied retroactively, changes the punishment and inflicts a greater punishment than the law annexed to the crime when it was committed. Um, uh, you read this case of People versus Costa, um, and then alters the legal rules of evidence and authorizes conviction upon a lesser or different testimony than the law required at the time of the commission of an offense, assuming to regulate civil rights and remedies only in effect imposes a penalty or deprivation of a right for something which was, when done, was lawful, deprives a person accused of a crime of some lawful protection to which he was entitled to, such as protection of a former conviction or acquittal or a proclamation of amnesty. Um, Remember, in case of Nasi Villar versus People, penal laws cannot be given a retroactive effect except when they are favorable to the accused. Bill of Attainder, what is a Bill of Attainder? It is allowing Congress or the legislative department to perform the judicial act of adjudication. No? By a mere law, anybody that is described by law automatically becomes liable. No? A bill of attainder as a legislative act which inflicts punishment on individuals or members of a particular group without a judicial trial. Elements, a specification of certain individuals or a group of individuals, the imposition of a punishment for penal or otherwise, and the lack of judicial trial. People versus Ferrer. This is restriction is to demarcate the role of the court and the role of Congress. In the case of People versus Ferrell, the Supreme Court said that the anti-subversion law is not a bill of attainder because it does not specify that the Communist Party of the Philippines or members thereof for the purpose of punishment. What it does is simply to declare the party to be an organized conspiracy to overthrow the government, and the term Communist Party of the Philippines for similar implications. No? Um, what punishments cannot be imposed? Involuntary servitude. No involuntary servitude in any form shall exist except as punishment for a crime whereof the party shall have been duly convicted. Is involuntary servitude allowed in the Philippines? Yes, but only for penalties after due conviction, no? Otherwise, involuntary servitude outside of that circumstance shall be illegal, unconstitutional in fact. Return to work orders are not constitutive of compulsion to work under the concept of involuntary servitude, because if you recall in your labor law, if you are required to return to work by the Secretary of Labor when he takes over a labor conflict, you are not compelled to work. If you don't want to work, then you stop working, but you have the consequence of losing your employment possibly. No, the worker can, of course, give up his work, thus severing his ties with the company if he does not want to obey the order. But the order must be obeyed if he wants to retain his work, even if his inclination is to strike. This is done by the Secretary of Labor, the return to work order for industries that affect public welfare, no, or general services that are beneficial to the public. Excessive fines shall not be imposed. In fact, the revised penal code has a mechanism where the uh, the court, the judge can submit to the uh, chief executive through the DOJ statements as may be deemed proper without suspending the execution of a sentence when the strict enforcement of the provisions of the revised penal code would result to the imposition of a clearly excessive penalty, including the excessive fine. No? Taking into consideration the degree of the of malice on the injury caused by the offense. So judges are free to suggest to the chief executive or make a manifestation of the excessiveness of penalties, including fines. Cruel, degrading, and inhuman punishments cannot be inflicted. Okay, is death penalty cruel and excessive? Well, it's in the same section. It's found in the Constitution, no? But not necessarily. No. No torture, force, violence, threat, intimidation, or any other means which vitiate the free will shall be used against person, nor secret detention places and solitary incommunicado or other similar forms of detention be allowed. Um, um, what constitutes cruel and unusual punishments is not the severity or the length of time of incarceration, but on the characteristic of the punishment. Um, it's the characteristic which the public regards as cruel or obsolete. Flogging, hanging, public execution, perhaps, or prolonged suffering, no? Perhaps, no? That's why we have the anti-torture law and enforced disappearances law, by the way, to implement this constitutional requirement. Death penalty is not cruel and degrading because, in fact, it's mentioned in the Constitution. You have to understand what is not prohibited by the Constitution remains as possible. No? But for now, we do not have the death penalty. That's why the Supreme Court in Echegaray mentions that for as long as the death penalty is in the legal system, then it must be implemented. But luckily, we do not have it now. So does so many civilized nations. No? Indefinite imprisonment is not allowed because it is not for the courts to fix the term of imprisonment when the no points of reference have been provided by the legislature. You know? So if a law provides for a minimum but no maximum that could allow the court's discretion, no, or if the judge imposes penalties that has no maximum period, that is indefinite imprisonment, and that is prohibited under the law. There is a matter on the contempt of court, no. You can be imprisoned under the rules of court for not performing an act which is subject of an order. When the contempt consists of a refusal to or omission to do an act which is yet in the power of the respondent to perform, he may be imprisoned by the order of the court. Yet he is not unconstitutionally detained because the keys to his freedom is in his hands. He just needs to comply. Double jeopardy. No person shall be twice put in jeopardy for punishment for the same offense. If an act is punished by law and an ordinance, conviction, or acquittal under either shall constitute a bar to another prosecution for the same act. So we have two types of double jeopardy for the same act. In the phrase saying that if an act is punished by a law and an ordinance, conviction, or acquittal under either shall constitute a bar to another prosecution for the same act. And an example of this is the case of People versus Relova on the prohibition of this case, one on illegal wiretap and then theft of electricity. Or that is one being under the revised penal code and the other by a reason of an ordinance. If the two charges are based on one and the same act, conviction or acquittal under either shall be a bar to the subsequent prosecution. It is to prevent harassment of an accused person by multiple prosecutions. Okay. For the same offense, no person shall be put in jeopardy for the punishment for same offense. Literally, it's for the same crime. No. It protects the accused not against the peril of a second punishment, but against being tried for the same offense. It's the proverbial sword hanging on top of your head, that though you have already been incarcerated, been tried, perhaps and acquitted for one offense, it cannot be possible that it can be brought up again in another case, because it will be perpetually menacing to you. So, sabi ng court, the accused will never be free from cruel and constant menace of a never-ending charge. So, to raise, these are the requirements for double jeopardy. First jeopardy must have been attached prior to the second, meaning there's a valid information filed before a competent court. Accused has been arraigned, he entered his plea, and it was terminated without his express consent. So the first jeopardy must have been attached there. The first jeopardy must have been validly terminated in the court, and the second jeopardy must be for the same offense as of the first. Okay, so this is a double jeopardy for the same offense. These are the instances when the accused may invoke the protection of double jeopardy: when the accused has been previously convicted, acquitted, or the case has been dismissed, otherwise terminated without his consent. Double jeopardy applies in these instances. The effect, the second case is limited, no? The accused or acquittal of the conviction or acquittal of the accused, or the dismissal of the case shall be a bar to another prosecution for the offense charged, for any attempt of the same, or any offense which necessarily includes or necessarily is included in the offense charged, like perhaps from murder downgraded to homicide in the second case. Hindi pwede. Exceptions: supervening facts, newly discovered evidence, or when the offense was pleaded guilty to a lesser one without the consent of the prosecutor or the offended party. That's why in case of plea bargaining, you should always get the consent of the offended party and the prosecutor representing the offended party. The following instances restricts the application of double jeopardy. Administrative cases, no double jeopardy there, and so on. There is no double jeopardy in preliminary investigation, no double jeopardy, because it is not yet a court. So if you are subjected to a second preliminary investigation, do not invoke double jeopardy. Invoke something else. No? Follow whatever is the advice of your remedial law professor for that, but not double jeopardy. This case of People versus Manila. This case of Flores versus Montemayor. This is a case pala saying that the dismissal of a case during preliminary investigation does not constitute double jeopardy. Preliminary investigation is not yet part of a trial. So distinguish double jeopardy from res judicata. Double jeopardy is criminal, res judicata is of general application. Double jeopardy concerns with how many times the state can prosecute someone for the same offense, while res judicata deals with the circumstances in which parties are barred from litigating the issue because of the result of a previous litigation. The privilege of the writ of habeas corpus. The privilege of the writ of habeas corpus shall not be suspended except in cases of invasion or rebellion when the public safety requires it. So the president can suspend the privilege of the writ. No? What is habeas corpus? Literally, it's to bring the living, breathing body of the person to court. No? The purpose is to inquire as to the legality of the detention of a person. No? It implies the following, that the case must be, a petition for this writ must be decided immediately because it involves the liberty of the person. No? So the liberty takes precedence over all things, no? And in cases of petitions for habeas corpus, it must be resolved within 48 hours or 2 days. Functions of the writ. as a speedy and effectual remedy to relieve a person from unlawful restraint. That's the general purpose. Case of Villavicencio versus Lukban involving people from Davao City. No? It's also to determine the legality of one's detention. The restraint of liberty must be in the nature of illegal and involuntary deprivation of freedom. And it's also a post-conviction remedy that the only means of giving retroactive effect to a penal provision favorable to the accused when the judge has lost jurisdiction over the case is the writ of habeas corpus. Other affirmative rights, free access to the courts in Section 11, free access to the courts and quasi-judicial bodies and adequate legal assistance shall not be denied any person by reason of poverty. Protection and enforcement of constitutional rights. The law shall provide for penal and civil sanctions for violations of the Bill of Rights, no? Specifically referring to the rights of persons under custodial investigations. So you could bring the law enforcer to court, no? For civil or penal sanctions, including administrative sanctions for them. And then you have compensation. The law shall provide for penal and civil sanctions for violations of this section, as well as compensation for rehabilitation of victims of torture and similar practices. No? You have RA 10368 providing for reparation and recognition for the victims of human rights violations during the Marcos regime. Okay. Writ of amparo, I think this is best taken in your law on human rights, but again, understand the concept of the writ of amparo. Thank you very much.